What is your first impression when you see this young man? What do you think he's capable of? And what do you think we can learn from him? Do you think he can walk? Do you think he can talk? Ride a bike? Swim? Ice skate? If you paused or hesitated for just a moment, that's okay, because I am here to introduce you to my friend, Eric. Eric is an incredible 24-year-old man. Like any 24-year-old young man, Eric loves music. He loves playing games on his iPad. He loves his family. He loves spending time with his friends. And Eric loves cats. Eric's kind, he's supportive, he's loyal. He's incredibly compassionate, and Eric gives the best hugs. And yes, Eric has a disability. But William Brannon said that society's accumulated myths and fears about disability and disease are as handicapping as the physical limitations that flow from actual impairment. Society, that's you and me. So how do we keep our myths and fears from being more impactful than an actual disability? That is in the power of thinking what if rather than what is, and we all have that ability. When we see somebody with a spinal cord injury, we see their wheelchair first. Somebody with Parkinson's, you see a tremor. And when you go visit that family member with Alzheimer's, you wait for that first repeated story. That's what is in disability. It's what meets the eye and what's most immediately apparent about that individual. But we're all multifaceted human beings, and I can't tell by looking at you what you're capable of at first glance. So what happens when we take a few extra moments to see our neighbors with disabilities for their strengths rather than those disabilities? Well, we might feel the incredible strength of the arms of the individual who propels that wheelchair all day long. Or we might get to hear and understand the incredible intellect of that person with Parkinson's. And on that repeated story, we might feel the unconditional love of that family member with Alzheimer's that causes them to tell that story one more time. When we think what if in disability, we give the power back to that individual with disability, and we give them the opportunity to show us what they're capable of. I got the opportunity to witness this firsthand with Eric. When I met Eric, he was 16. He was in a wheelchair, and he was nonverbal. Eric communicated using head nods, some head shakes, and a few gestures. And I got to witness the incredible transformation of Eric as everyone is in his life, from his teachers, his therapists, his friends, his family, and even complete strangers, thought, what if? They thought, what if Eric can get out of his wheelchair and walk up a flight of stairs? What if Eric can get on his bed all on his own? And the answer is that Eric could. And Eric could ride a bike. Eric could swim. And Eric could ice skate. And 5 years later, at Eric's graduation ceremony, he got out of that wheelchair, walked down an aisle and across the stage, surrounded by the love and support of those family and friends who thought, what if? And they thought, what if Eric can speak using more than a few gestures? What if he can pick between two pictures to tell us what he wants to do? And the answer is that Eric could. And he used that same iPad that became his voice to give a speech at his graduation ceremony, thanking all of his family and friends for their love and support. And at the age of 21, Eric used that same iPad to tell his family how he felt for the very first time. And do you know what he said? I love you. Can you imagine the power of hearing your child say, I love you for the very first time at the age of 21? That's the power of what if. When we think what if and disability, we give the power back to that person rather than giving power to their disability, our myths, or our fears. We give that individual the opportunity to rise to challenge, because individuals with disabilities aren't protected when we shelter them from a challenge. Rather, they're given the dignity of risk. And we give them that challenge. They might not always succeed, but that's okay, because that means that they've been honored with the right to fail. And when they do rise to that challenge, they get to show us what they're capable of. They're given the opportunity to succeed. Dignity of risk, right to fail, opportunity to succeed. But this is only half of what we can do for our neighbors with disabilities. We owe it to our neighbors with disabilities to give it a shot at inclusion. Now, we've done so much to make our physical world accessible to individuals with disabilities. We have wheelchair ramps, we have elevators, and we have wheelchair height counters. Are those truly inclusive, or are they just accessible? Because accessibility is physical. Inclusion is social, it's emotional, it's belonging. Inclusion is when everybody has the opportunity to go to prom. Inclusion is when individuals with disabilities are the ones having these conversations with you and I. And inclusion is when you're in that elevator or at that dining room table and you turn to the person on your left with a disability and you would start the exact same conversation as you would with the person on your right. And that conversation starts with hello. Now, that first hello might not be comfortable, and that's okay, because it's our turn to get comfortable being uncomfortable when it comes to inclusion work. We owe it to our neighbors with disabilities to do this work. But we're trying something new too, so we can give ourselves that same dignity of risk, opportunity to fail, and right to succeed that we just mentioned. We have so much to learn from our neighbors with disabilities. They're not just sources of inspiration or perspective. They're individuals with strengths and gifts that deserve to be appreciated and built upon, just like you and I. Our world is an infinitely more versatile and dynamic place when we include individuals with disabilities. We all have the opportunity to learn from the Erics in our community. And it starts by thinking, what if? And it starts with hello.